Welcome to The Mission Matters. The Mission Matters is a partnership between 1615 and Missio Nexus, who have a shared passion to mobilize God's people to be a part of His mission. The Mission Matters is hosted by Matthew Ellison, president of 1615, and Ted Esler, president of Missio Nexus. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And now, here are your hosts, Matthew Ellison and Ted Esler.
Well, hello and welcome once again to the podcast. I'm Matthew Ellison, and if you are a regular listener or viewer, you know I'm not alone. I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Ted Esler. Ted, it's always a blessing to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. You know, we always start this way, but I listen to quite a few podcasts, and this is the norm. So, Ted, how's it going? Going well, yeah?
It's kind of that way every time, isn't it?
Every time.
It actually is going well. We're recording this just after Easter weekend.
Yeah.
And we had a really powerful time in church on Sunday.
Yeah.
But I would just say the whole weekend was worshipful. So it was great.
Yeah, me too. Same. I woke up 4 a.m. on Easter morning. Just, you know, sometimes you wake up and like it's heartburn or who knows what's going on. But I just had this sense that God woke me up. And for 2 hours, I was just camping out in 1 Corinthians 15. The resurrection. Where would we be without the resurrection?
Fantastic. Amen. Where would we be?
Amen. Okay, well, we always start off with a softball question. And in light of the topic today, which people will find out in just a moment what we're talking about, I thought we could start with our first job. And I'll kick in here. Paperboy. I threw the Albuquerque Tribune, the afternoon newspaper. So school would wrap up around 2:30 or 3. And there would be a stack of papers when I got back home. I'd put them in rubber bands and get on my bike. And I think I was only like 11 years old. And I tell my wife, I can't imagine when my boys were 11 throwing papers. I just can't imagine it, but I was doing it.
That whole world has changed. I mean, I don't know. Are there paper? There's no paper, boys or girls where I live. Similar for you?
Yeah, I don't see them anymore.
Yeah, very different nowadays. My first job actually was as a short order cook. When I was a teenager, I lied about my age to get a job at a local restaurant. I actually started out washing dishes. I did that for about 6 or 7 months and then flipped over to the fryer and then on upwards making pizzas and doing all sorts of cooking. I used that to put myself through college. And to this day, I love cooking breakfast. I did a lot of breakfast cooking back in the day. So,
yeah, breakfast is my favorite meal, by the way. I love breakfast.
All right. Well, I'd say breakfast where you live in New Mexico is maybe the best breakfast I've ever had.
Yeah,
I don't know how many of our listeners have been to New Mexico, but you've not had Mexican food until you've had it in New Mexico. Especially
yes, amen.
Huevos rancheros there, Christmas style.
There you go.
Okay, on to other things here. Our guest today is Candra Chahyadi, and we're going to start by asking you that very same question. What was your first job, Candra?
Well, my first job is being a tutor. So I came to the United States in 1999, pursuing my master's. And at that time, I looked up the newspaper, and it was looking for like tutor in math and physics for the ROTC students. So I applied, and that's how I got like my first job ever.
Wow, that's great. Well, that tells us a little bit about an interesting background. So tell us a little bit about who you are as we get this interview started.
Sure. Thank you for the time. So I am currently working as a professor of finance at a public university in Illinois. Again, I came here like to the United States in 1999. I first went to South Carolina, and then at that time they had like a sandwich program. So I spent like 1.5 years in South Carolina, and then the next like 1.5 years in China. So I got like my international business MBA. And then like God led me to pursue like a degree, a doctorate degree in finance. And that's how I went to Oklahoma. And that's how I knew about like American football and how I became like, a big fan of Oklahoma Sooners.
All right.
Yeah. And then in 2007, I got my job here in Illinois. And that's how and my family and we moved here. And that's where like we are living now.
All right, super. So your ministry is about helping people with personal financial issues. Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about how you see that as a part and crucial to discipleship?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the question that I'm looking forward like to addressing. So not long after I started my job as a professor, God put like a vision in my heart, which is to teach people about finance. At that time, I often went to a supermarket or like a grocery store, and when I met like new people, sometimes like they ask me, say, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I teach," and they said, "Well, what do you teach?" And I said, "Finance." They say, "Oh, finance," and like something that I need to learn, and because we really need it, and that happened like quite often. And then one day, I just felt, Lord, would you please show me what you want me to do? Because I want that my life is can become like a significant life, not just like me trying like to make ends meet. And then God says like, well, you should like do something that you have been doing now, which is teaching. And I said, okay, what should I teach? And he has maybe like finance, something that you have been teaching now. And that's how I became the first time like I started like my ministry teaching finance to people. But the more I taught like finance, the more I realized that finance is not about like transferring like financial knowledge. A lot of people think that, hey, if only I know more about finance, I can totally change my life. And I think that is not true. That is not true. Because a lot of us know instinctively and naturally that we need like to spend less and earn more. We know that. So if you have that understanding, basically you are like financially literate. Well, some people say, oh, well, but I don't know, like, like the technique of like, how to invest money, how to do this, how to do that, how to do budget. Well, that's the easy part. Because especially these days, you can go online and just type, like budgeting technique or like investment, something, and you will have like, millions and millions and millions and millions of results online like that. But the most difficult part for me, I mean, like, for us, like to have like a financial transformation, us like to understand the reasons why we always do the things that we did, the reasons why we do the things that we shouldn't do, and that we don't do the things that we should. Maybe I'm like just, echoing the saying of like Apostle Paul, but that is so true. We know what we should do, but we just don't do it. Or we know what we shouldn't do, and we still do it. And we don't do like what we should do. So the way I see it is like, I think there's got to be like something behind like our failure in like, doing the things that we should, right?
Yeah.
So the more I learn about it, the more I help people about like, improving their financial condition, I learned that they said, oh, wow, there's like a big, like, psychological, spiritual, mental issues that need like to be first addressed before we can talk about like, like learning like some technique. And that's how I started like, the ministry. And I remember like the first time that I, in like January, like 2018, I remember I was invited like to go to Hong Kong to work with like Indonesian like migrant workers in Hong Kong. And at that time, it is very interesting because at that time, um, like those people, they have been like trained, quote unquote, by a lot of like organizations. Before they went to Hong Kong, they were like trained by the government. They had like to go through like kind of like a boot camp, you know, teaching them about like many different things, teaching the language, teaching like practical skills. And then like, you know, like local banks in Hong Kong, NGOs, they conducted like a lot of like financial trainings for them. But the fact of the matter is like, you know, they didn't change their behavior. They still like, you know, did the things they shouldn't do in the first place. So when I first like went to Hong Kong and met them for the first time, my first question is, hey, how can I learn like, you know, from you? And how can I help you? So I didn't come in as someone who already have like, you know, all the solutions, but I try like to learn from them. And then as they like poured out like, you know, the story of their life, and I understand that, oh, wow, this is not a matter of like, you know, them not knowing the financial stuff, because they have learned it like, you know, many, many times from many different like organizations. But they said, oh, you know what? I spend money that I don't have because I want to impress people like back home, for example. Or they say, oh, you know what? I felt hurt when like people like, you know, bullied me, like, you know, when I was like, you know, a kid. They like, you know, ridiculed me. They like, you know, like gave me like, you know, called me names, like stuff like that. And I felt like so angry. I felt so angry. And I want to show them, I want to prove to them that, you know what, I'm somebody. So I said, wow, I mean, this is a great revelation. And I totally felt that at that time, God like revealed to me that, you know what, if you want to help people with a financial condition, you need like to first work with them, connect them with me so that they understand what life is all about and what they're looking for in life. Because if they don't get that, we're kind of like, you know, running in circle. I mean, like, you know, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, like of course, like some people, they can like make a lot of money. I don't deny that fact. But for us, like to make some money and be able like to manage it and to use it in a way that God wants us to do, that's the challenge. That's the biggest challenge. So to answer your question, Ted, why like this financial matter is closely related to discipleship? Because the answer is pretty simple. Because financial matters is all about transforming and changing the condition of our heart.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the condition of our heart, then I mean, like, you know, it's got to be tied like to discipleship.
Yeah. You know, Candra, I don't know the number of references, but Jesus taught about money quite frequently.
2,350.
There you go. I figured you might have that number.
Yes.
And so this is a heart issue. There's no doubt about it. I think it was Spurgeon who talked about the conversion of the heart and the conversion of the pocketbook. He talked about a twofold conversion. You know, maybe for our listeners, you could give a high level synoptic overview of the program, how it works. Could you do that for us?
Sure. So what I'm currently doing with people is we go through like, you know, like 10 weeks of like mentoring and discipleship. So the first 3 weeks is we learn about like 7 mental, emotional, and spiritual values that we need like to learn before we even like talk about like the financial matter, right?
Candra, is your audience here, are they primarily believers already or not?
No, actually, great question, Ted. Actually, the audience is like for everyone, because I believe that, you know, like the good news, the gospel has to be like, you know, share with like everyone can see like the beauty of it. So, like the first one, I mean, like, like the first mental issue or like spiritual issue or like emotional issue that I talk about in this program is about making peace with ourselves. And I mean, like a lot of people got confused. I mean, like, when I always like chuckled. I mean, when I talk about like the issue for the first time, and they say, "Wait a minute." I mean, like you're talking about like making peace with ourselves in regards like to improving our financial condition. And I said, "You got it right." Because why? Because a lot of us made a lot of mistakes in the past, and like like so far I have worked with like the human trafficking survivors, migrant workers, farmers, like refugees, but not only like, those people like who a lot of people like deem like to be marginalized, but I also like work like, like the white collar like professionals and also like some high net worth like individuals. And the issues are the same. Very like, interesting.
Okay, so
It's
you've got
very,
your first set of about 3 that are on that. What happens next in your program?
okay, yeah. So I mean, like we talk about like making peace with ourselves. We talk about self-identity, talk about authenticity, talk about accountability, and then purpose, like simplicity, and then perseverance. That's the first for the first set. And then for the next one, we talk about like the creating like financial assessment, which is like how to um, like measure like where we are like financially speaking and where we want to go, so creating like financial goals. And then we in week 3 in session 3 we talk about like creating a budget, and I mean like the pitfalls in creating budget, why people failed in following their budget, and then paying off debt. We talk about emergency fund, insurance, investment, and then the last part, which is I believe that is the most like important part, is about generosity. And when we talk about generosity, we teach people about the need for us like to start like sharing, not only like financially, but also like we need like to learn like to love people, how to like mentor other people, and how to disciple other people who may not know about like the stuff that we know. So those are the kind of like the synopsis of the program, Ted.
Candra, something I'm really interested in that Ted had surfaced in an email to me is how you're using this to impact unreached people groups. And given our audience, I imagine they'd like to hear that as well. How are you using this to impact the unreached?
Yes. It's it is like such a wonderful story, Matthew. When we start like teaching like these concepts, a lot of people don't understand this, especially the non-believers. When we teach them about like the self-identity, they don't even know what self-identity means. When we teach about like the making peace with ourselves, a lot of people don't understand that. And they say like, how can I forgive myself if I have made like terrible mistakes in the past? So that's how we kind of like, jump in and say, well, you know what? You can forgive yourself because God who created you first forgave you. So we taught them about like relationship with the one and true God, and that's how that like relationship with God can lead us like to be able like to forgive ourselves and have hope in the future. And there's a lot of like places and opportunities that we will. I mean, you will be very surprised to see how many opportunities that you can see. I mean, like where you can like, like throw the seed among the people, the unreached people, and how natural and how easy it is like to have a conversation, a very deep, like a minimum conversation without like provoking them, you know what I mean? Sometimes like when we try like to share like something with them, the unreached people, it's very like delicate situation, especially in countries that are pretty hostile. But when we talk about money, something that they are very interested in, the conversation like flows like very naturally. That's kind of like
how flexible is the program to different cultures?
Actually, it is very, very flexible. And the reason is because, like, I understand that the way we like use money is heavily influenced by culture. So understanding that, I decided like not to come as someone who already knows everything. And that's kind of like the problem with a lot of like consultants or like like aid agencies. Sometimes like like aid agencies come to like a country and just kind of like just boom, they just like spend a lot of like resources on helping people without understanding first like the need of the local people. So when you ask me, it's like how flexible is it? How flexible is it, like like to help like people with of different culture? Well, it is very flexible because we try like to understand them and to really learn from them before we even like talk about the stuff that we need to share with them.
So maybe you could talk about some of your partners. I know Ted mentioned some of your partners in ministry. Maybe you could surface some of them and let us know how that impacts your work.
Well, I recently got accepted as a fellow at the Reason to Believe. And the reason why I joined them, because I can see like the potential collaboration between the RTB and my ministry, because they try like to explain to the people like the apologetics, how like we can prove that God is real, Jesus is real, and how Jesus cares about us. I mean, like shows like the evidence about the creation. And I think that's kind of like the type of ministry that I like to work with. And also I work with like I'm in the discussion right now. Actually, I just got a phone call last night, and I'm working with a US based like organization that is working in the area of like human trafficking. And we are trying to, I'm sorry, Ted?
I think we're interested too. And you obviously don't just show up in a place with no local support. How is your ministry structured in terms of when you arrive somewhere you've never been before? I'm assuming you have local national partners where you're going. Is that how you
That's
operate?
correct.
Yeah.
You got it. Yep. Yes, that's correct. So I usually talk to like some local organizations, and then if they are willing like to host us and help us and support us in terms of like providing the people, because the key element of this program is like local people, because I can do all the teaching through online like class, but at the end of the day, we need like to depend a lot on relationship, because we are talking about discipleship. So we need like to have like people on the ground who know like local people there, and that's how we can work with them. So let me give you an example. So I work with like some Iranian refugees in Turkey, and the reason why I can do that is because I work with a local like missionary there, and they contacted me for some reason. I didn't know them at first, but they contacted me, and we came to an agreement that, hey, let's just like collaborate, and let's try like to help like this group. And at that time, it's really amazing because I did like the teaching, and I also like translated like some of the contents into the Farsi language. So the organization, the local organization, they provided the people on the ground, the local people, so that they can have like weekly fellowship with them, so they can follow up on issues and questions or anything that they can come up with.
So Candra, I remember one time somebody saying to me, anywhere you go in the world, any culture you're in, there needs to be someone in the human household that has a job that can provide for the rest of the family. And therefore, this organization, or the person that said this to me, was focused on business's mission. I think in a similar way, everybody deals with finances.
Yes.
This fits all across the world in so many different places and ways. And one reason why I wanted to bring you on the podcast is because I'm pretty sure that some of our listeners are sitting out there and they're thinking about either a team they're involved with on the field, or maybe they are the field team, and this could be an awesome fit to what they're doing. What's the easiest way for people to connect with you to get a little more information about what you're doing?
They can send me an email through mentoring@myfinancecourses.com.
Okay. Mentoring at
myfinancecourses.com.
Okay, great.
That's correct.
So if anybody out there wants to follow up, use that email address. And I think this is a really great way for people to make an impact in lives.
Ted, I want to build on that. As you've been talking and I've been listening to this conversation with Candra, I was reminded of a situation my father-in-law went through several years ago, very successful businessman, entrepreneur, but was in the midst of some real challenges as he was transitioning his business and things like that. Just, emotional, struggles, things like that. And a friend of ours, a mutual friend who supports our ministry, actually, he's a financial advisor. He was more of a minister to my father-in-law in that time than my father-in-law's pastor was.
Wow.
And so I think, issues of finances are very personal. They're very real. And it's a great bridge to evangelism, to engaging the unreached. As you said, Ted, this is something everybody faces. And so it's a common denominator when it comes to building the kingdom. So I want to thank you, Candra, for your time today, for your ministry. Keep up the wonderful work. And of course, Ted, you know what time it is. Mm-hmm. It is time when we talk about something you like. So tell us what it is today.
Okay, well, today I want to share with you something I like, and I do it with a little bit of fear and trepidation, asking you to divorce the politics from what I'm about to say, all right? Somebody sent me a link to a presentation by a guy named Jerry Boring, who leads up the Daily Wire, which is kind of a conservative media enterprise. And the link was a speech that he gave about their vision for the future. And it kind of shocked me, again, not because of the topic that he was pushing, but because this was a guy who was painting a vision for the future and then taking action steps to create a different future. And I thought to myself, and they're not doing it in a small way. They're trying to do it, in a society changing way. And I just thought to myself, as I listened to this, I could learn some leadership lessons from what's happening in this talk because of how he was just doing such a great job of creating a sense of insurgency, which is something I write about in my book, The Innovation Crisis, getting people excited about a different future. Just so many of the things that we talk about in good leadership, it was in that one talk. And you can find it if you go to the Daily Wire, just look up company meeting and you can listen to this presentation. Now, some of you are not going to like the politics there. I get that. Just try to listen to it with the ears and eyes of somebody evaluating leadership. And I found it to be really inspiring. So Matthew, that's something I like today.
All right. I'm going to have to listen to it. Thanks, Candra, so much again for your wisdom, for your time, for your ministry. Folks, we'll see you next time.
Before you go, would you visit our hosts' websites? There you will find a wealth of interesting and challenging information about the state of the Great Commission. They are 1615.org and missionexus.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss one. Mission Matters is presented through a partnership between 1615 Missions Coaching and Missio Nexus.